The transport ship shuddered as it dropped out of hyperspace. Through the small window, Lee Hanna watched the Galactic Military Academy come into view. The massive structure floated in space like a metal city, its towers and training grounds stretching for miles in every direction. "First time seeing it?" asked Kim Do-yun from the seat beside her. The young man's hands gripped the armrests as another tremor ran through the ship. "Yes," Hanna replied quietly. She had studied pictures of the academy for months, but seeing it in person was different. The place looked cold and unwelcoming. Around them, other passengers prepared for docking. Most were not human. Tall reptilian beings with scaled skin checked their equipment. 6 armed creatures with spider-like features cleaned their weapons. Beings made of what looked like living crystal hummed with inner light. Each species looked powerful and dangerous in their own way. Hanna felt small by comparison. She was average height for a human woman, with black hair tied back and simple training clothes. Do-yun looked equally ordinary, a pilot from Earth's moon colonies who had volunteered for this program. "Look at them," whispered another human cadet from across the aisle. Park Ji-won was younger than the others, barely 20 years old. "How are we supposed to compete with that?" Hanna followed his gaze to a crystalline being whose body pulsed with energy. The creature could probably kill all 3 humans without breaking whatever passed for sweat among his people. "We'll find a way," she said, though she wasn't sure she believed it. The ship docked with a loud clang. As they gathered their bags, Hanna heard laughing from the alien cadets. One of the reptilians pointed at the humans and said something in his own language. His friends laughed louder. They walked through the docking bay in groups. The humans stayed together while the aliens formed their own clusters by species. The facility was enormous, with corridors that stretched beyond sight. Everything was built for beings much larger than humans. Their first stop was the orientation hall. Hundreds of cadets filled the massive room, sitting in sections based on their home worlds. The humans were given a small corner at the back. Hanna counted only 12 human faces in the entire crowd. General Voxathera entered the hall and every conversation stopped. The reptilian commander was 8 feet tall with dark green scales and cold yellow eyes. Scars covered his arms and neck. When he spoke, his voice carried to every corner of the room without need for amplification. "Cadets," he began, "you are here because your worlds consider you their finest warriors. You have trained your entire lives for this moment. Most of you will fail." He paused, letting his words sink in. "The Academy has produced the galaxy's greatest military leaders for over 200 years. We have never lowered our standards. We will not start now." His eyes swept across the room, lingering on the human section for just a moment. "In 1 month, you will face the Crucible trials. These tests will push you beyond your limits. They will break the weak and forge the strong. The bottom 10% will be sent home in disgrace. Some may not be sent home at all." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Even the most confident cadets looked nervous. "Your instructors will show no mercy. Your fellow cadets are your competition, not your friends. Trust no one. Rely on no one but yourself." He gestured to the alien instructors standing along the walls. Each one looked like they had been born for war. "Instructor Krevdan will handle combat training." A 6-armed spider being stepped forward. "Commander Zedhul will teach tactics." A reptilian female with cybernetic implants nodded. "And I will personally oversee the final trials." The general's gaze found the humans again. "Some of you come from worlds that have never known real war. Some of you represent species that have only recently joined our federation. You will find that past achievements mean nothing here. Only results matter." Several alien cadets turned to stare at the humans. Their looks were not friendly. "Dismissed," General Voxathera commanded. "Report to your assigned quarters. Training begins at dawn." As the crowd began to move, a crystalline being approached the human section. He was taller than the others of his kind, with sharp edges that seemed to cut the light around him. His name tag read Zilnex. "So these are Earth's warriors," he said, his voice like breaking glass. "How disappointing." Hanna stood up slowly. "Is there something you need?" Zilnex laughed, a sound like wind chimes in a storm. "Need from you? I was simply curious to see the species that somehow bought their way into the Federation." "We didn't buy anything," Do-hyun said, rising as well. "No? Then how does a world that still uses chemical rockets and metal bullets earn a seat among the stars? Your technology is centuries behind ours. Your physical capabilities are laughable. You have no natural weapons, no enhanced abilities, nothing that makes you special." Other alien cadets had stopped to watch. A crowd was forming. Zilnex reached out and grabbed Hana's wrist. His crystalline fingers were like a vice. Your bones are so fragile. Your skin is so soft. How did creatures like you ever survive long enough to develop space travel? Hana looked at his grip on her wrist, then up at his glowing face. Maybe you'll find out during the trials. The crystalline being squeezed harder. Hana didn't flinch, though pain shot up her arm. Perhaps I will, Zilnex said. He released her and stepped back. Try not to die too quickly, human. I want to see what passes for courage among your kind. As the aliens walked away, Hana rubbed her wrist. Dark bruises were already forming. Are you okay? Jiwan asked. I'm fine. She wasn't, but showing weakness here would be a mistake. They found their quarters in the human section of the academy. The rooms were small and basic, a bed, a desk, and a small closet. Everything was built for human-sized occupants, which meant they were the smallest rooms in the facility. That evening, they met in the common area to compare notes about their instructors and schedules. Every human cadet looked worried. The combat instructor made me spar with one of the spider beings, reported Cadet Cho Min-yuk. I couldn't even touch him. He has 6 arms and can move faster than I can blink. The academics aren't much better, added Cadet Sun Yuna. They're testing us on weapon systems and tactics from species we've never encountered. How are we supposed to know how to fight enemies we've never seen? Hana listened to their complaints but said nothing. She had spent the evening in the academy's library, reading everything she could find about their alien classmates. The more she learned, the more worried she became. The Vexthari reptilians were 3 times stronger than humans and had natural armor. The arachnoids could think and react at superhuman speeds. The crystalline Zalethans could generate energy blasts and heal from injuries that would kill a human. Even the gas-breathing Nixari had advantages. They could survive in environments that would be instantly fatal to humans. We're not going to win by being stronger or faster, she finally said. The other humans looked at her. Then how do we win? Dohyun asked. Hana thought about her years in Earth's special forces. She remembered missions where her squad had been outnumbered and outgunned, but had still found ways to succeed. We win by being smarter. We win by working together. And we win by doing things they don't expect. Easy to say, muttered Jiwan, but tomorrow we start actual training. And from what I've seen, they're not going to go easy on us just because we're new. That night, Hana lay in her narrow bed and stared at the ceiling. Through the small window, she could see alien stars in unfamiliar patterns. She thought about Earth, about the people who were counting on the humans here to prove they belonged in the galaxy. In the morning, the real test would begin. She had no idea if they would survive it, but she knew they had to try. The alternative was going home in shame, confirming what the aliens already believed, that humans were too weak to stand among the stars. She closed her eyes and tried to sleep. Tomorrow would come soon enough. The alarm screamed through the human quarters at 4 a.m. Hana jolted awake as red lights flashed in the darkness. Around her, other human cadets stumbled out of bed, confused and disoriented. Move, 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 Instructor Crevden's voice echoed through the corridors. The 6-armed arachnoid appeared in their doorway, his multiple eyes gleaming in the artificial light. First trial begins now. Anyone not ready in 5 minutes fails immediately. Hana grabbed her training gear and ran for the assembly area. Her body ached from yesterday's orientation exercises, but there was no time to think about pain. Around her, alien cadets moved with practiced efficiency, their enhanced abilities making quick work of preparation. The Vexthari reptilians needed no gear. Their scales were natural armor. The crystalline Zelethans simply focused their energy and began glowing brighter. The arachnoids checked their weapons with 4 hands while using the other 2 for different tasks. The humans struggled to keep up. Jiwon dropped his equipment bag twice. Minhyuk couldn't find his helmet in the dark. Even Hana, with her military training, felt clumsy compared to the alien cadets. Pathetic, she heard Zilnex say to his crystalline companions. Look how they fumble in simple darkness. How did such creatures ever survive natural selection? The first trial was physical fitness. Each cadet had to complete an obstacle course designed to test speed, strength, and endurance. The course included climbing walls, lifting heavy weights, and running through environments with different gravity levels. Hana watched as the first group of Vexthari reptilians completed the course in under 10 minutes. Their powerful legs carried them up vertical walls like they were walking on flat ground. They lifted weights that would crush human bones and ran through high gravity zones without slowing down. The arachnoids were even more impressive. They used all 6 arms to navigate obstacles that would stop other species completely. Their reaction times were so fast they seemed to predict the course's challenges before they happened. When the human group was called, Hana felt every alien eye watching them. She stepped up to the starting line with Do-hyun beside her. The weight of expectations pressed down like a heavy blanket. "Begin," Krevdan commanded. Hana ran as fast as she could, but it wasn't fast enough. The first wall was 30 feet high and smooth as glass. She watched Do-hyun struggle to find handholds while alien cadets behind them simply leaped to the top in single bounds. The weightlifting section was worse. The lightest weight was designed for Vixthari strength levels. Hana could barely lift it off the ground while reptilian cadets tossed similar weights like they were toys. By the time she reached the gravity chamber, her muscles were screaming. The high gravity zone felt like trying to run underwater while wearing lead boots. Each step was agony. Each breath was a struggle. She finished dead last. Do-hyun came in second to last. Every other human cadet ranked in the bottom 20% of their class. Disappointing, but not surprising, General Voxothera noted as he reviewed the results. The reptilian commander stood on a platform overlooking the training area. Physical prowess is the foundation of military excellence. Those who cannot meet basic standards will not survive advanced training. That afternoon brought tactical simulations. Cadets were divided into mixed groups and given scenarios to solve. Each scenario tested different aspects of military thinking: resource management, strategic planning, and decision-making under pressure. Hana found herself grouped with Zilnex, 2 Vexthari reptilians and an arachnoid. The scenario was simple: defend a space station from incoming attack ships with limited weapons and personnel. The aliens immediately began discussing firepower calculations and defensive positions. Their solutions were direct and brutal. Meet force with greater force, use superior technology to overwhelm the enemy. What about evacuation protocols? Hana asked. There are civilians on that station. Zilnex's crystalline form flickered with what might have been annoyance. Civilians are irrelevant to the tactical situation. We must focus on destroying the enemy before they can do significant damage. But the scenario says our job is to defend the station, not destroy it. If we sacrifice the civilians to win the battle, have we really accomplished the mission? The mission is to stop the enemy attack, growled one of the Vexthari. Dead civilians cannot be attacked. Hana bit back her response. She had different ideas about the scenario, but her teammates weren't interested in hearing them. They proceeded with their plan while she sat quietly and took notes. The simulation began. The alien strategy worked exactly as planned. They destroyed the attacking ships quickly and efficiently. The station was saved. The casualties were enormous, but the tactical objective was achieved. Excellent work, Instructor Zethul announced. Clean, direct, effective. This is how warfare should be conducted. That evening, the humans gathered in their common area to discuss the day. Everyone looked exhausted and demoralized. I don't understand how they expect us to compete, said Yuna. In every test, every trial, we're starting at a massive disadvantage. Maybe that's the point, suggested Do-hyun. Maybe they want us to fail so they can justify keeping humans out of the real military. Hana shook her head. I don't think so. I've been watching General Voxothera during the trials. He doesn't look satisfied when we fail. He looks interested. Interested in what? How badly we can embarrass our entire species. I don't know yet. But I think there's more going on here than just testing our abilities. The next few days followed the same pattern. Individual trials that favored alien physical advantages, group exercises where human perspectives were ignored, and constant reminders of how poorly Earth's representatives were performing. The other cadets grew bolder in their mockery. At meals, aliens would make jokes about human weakness. In training, they would demonstrate their superior abilities by casually performing feats that left humans exhausted. The worst incident happened during a weapons training session. The humans were struggling to operate plasma rifles designed for stronger species when Zilnex approached their group. Having trouble? He asked, his voice dripping with false concern. We're fine, Minhyuk replied, though sweat was pouring down his face from the effort of holding the heavy weapon. Here, let me show you. Zilnex took the rifle with one hand and fired a perfect shot at a distant target. Then he crushed the weapon's barrel like it was made of soft clay. Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot how fragile your equipment needs to be. He handed the destroyed rifle back to Minhyuk and walked away, leaving the humans staring at the useless weapon. But not everyone was hostile. During a break between sessions, Hana noticed a small figure working on maintenance equipment near the training area. It was another human, one she hadn't seen before. "Excuse me," she said, approaching carefully. "Are you a cadet?" The young man looked up. He had the quick, nervous movements of someone used to staying invisible. "Oh no, I'm Park Jiwon. I work in maintenance here. Help keep the facilities running." "How long have you been at the academy?" "About 6 months. I came here on a work exchange program before the military training started." He glanced around nervously. "I probably shouldn't be talking to you. The instructors don't like it when maintenance staff fraternize with cadets." "What have you observed about the training program?" Hana asked quietly. Jiwon hesitated, then leaned closer. "The academy has been preparing for human cadets for over a year. They've modified equipment, adjusted scenarios, and had long meetings about training protocols. This isn't some last-minute decision." "What kind of modifications?" "I don't know all the details, but I've seen them installing new monitoring systems and setting up private observation areas. General Voxthera has been spending a lot of time reviewing files marked with Earth designations." Before Hana could ask more questions, Instructor Krevdan appeared around the corner. Jiwon immediately went back to his work, and Hana walked away as casually as possible. That night she lay in bed thinking about what the maintenance worker had said. If the academy had been preparing for human cadets for over a year, it meant their presence here was not accidental. Someone had planned this. Someone wanted them here, but why? What could humans possibly offer that the galaxy's other species lacked? She thought about the tactical simulation from earlier. Her teammates had focused on firepower and efficiency, but Hana had seen other possibilities. Ways to minimize casualties while still achieving objectives. Methods that use deception and misdirection instead of brute force. Maybe that was the answer. Maybe the question wasn't what humans could do that aliens couldn't. Maybe the question was what humans would do that aliens wouldn't. The alarm would sound again in a few hours, bringing another day of trials and humiliation. But for the first time since arriving at the academy, Hana felt a spark of hope. They weren't supposed to compete with alien advantages. They were supposed to show alien disadvantages. 2 weeks into training, the trials shifted focus. Instead of individual tests, cadets now worked in mixed species teams on complex scenarios. The change caught many aliens off guard, but Hana had been expecting it. "Today's exercise involves urban warfare," announced Instructor Zethul. The cybernetic reptilian stood before a holographic city that flickered with realistic detail. "Enemy forces have taken hostages in a civilian area. Your mission is extraction with minimal casualties." Hana found herself assigned to Team 7 with Do-Yun, 2 Nixari gas breathers, and surprisingly, Zilnex. The crystalline being looked unhappy about the arrangement. "I suppose we must work with inferior equipment," he muttered, gesturing at the humans. "Maybe the inferior equipment will surprise you," Hana replied calmly. The scenario began. Enemy AI controlled dozens of robotic defenders throughout the city. Traditional military doctrine called for overwhelming force. Blast through defenses, neutralize threats, secure objectives. The Nexari immediately began calculating optimal attack patterns. Their logical minds processed dozens of variables in seconds. Zilnex prepared to channel energy blasts that could punch through building walls. "Wait," Hana said. "Before we start shooting, let's think about this differently." "There is no different way," Zilnex replied. "Enemy forces must be eliminated. Speed is essential to prevent hostage casualties." Hana studied the holographic city. "What if we don't eliminate them? What if we make them eliminate each other?" She pointed to the enemy positions. "Look at their placement. They're using standard defensive patterns. Overlapping fields of fire, mutual support positions, predictable patrol routes. But that predictability is a weakness." Do-Yun caught on immediately. "Psychological warfare. Make them think attacks are coming from directions they're not." "Exactly. We plant evidence of allied forces in Sector 3, fake communications about reinforcements in Sector 7, and create false targets that draw their attention away from the real hostages." The Nexari looked confused. Their species fought with logic and efficiency. Deception was not part of their military culture. "This approach is unnecessarily complex," one of them said. "Direct assault would be more reliable." "Direct assault against superior numbers in a fortified position?" Hana shook her head. That's not strategy. That's suicide with extra steps. Zilnex was studying the scenario with new interest. How would this deception be implemented? Hana smiled. Watch and learn. She began the simulation by having their team split up. Instead of advancing as a unit, they moved to different areas of the city. Dohyun used his pilot training to create false sensor readings that suggested incoming aircraft. The Nexari, following Hana's instructions, planted evidence of troop movements in empty buildings. Meanwhile, Hana hacked into the enemy communication system, not to disable it but to feed it false information. She created fake radio chatter about reinforcement schedules and supply convoys that didn't exist. The enemy AI responded exactly as she predicted. Robotic defenders began repositioning to counter threats that weren't there. Their carefully planned defensive matrix dissolved into chaos as units tried to cover too many possible attack vectors. Now we move, Hana said. While the enemy was distracted, Team 7 slipped through gaps in their defenses. They reached the hostage location without firing a single shot. The extraction was completed in 12 minutes with 0 casualties. Instructor Zethul reviewed the results with obvious surprise. Unconventional methods but effective results. How did you predict the enemy's reaction so accurately? Humans have been fighting humans for thousands of years, Hana explained. We understand how thinking opponents behave under pressure. We know how to exploit fear, confusion, and uncertainty. After the exercise, other teams began asking questions about human tactics. Even some of the more arrogant aliens seemed curious about these strange methods that prioritized brain over brawn. The next scenario was even more complex. Teams had to capture an enemy stronghold with limited resources and time constraints. Most groups approached it as a siege problem. Surround the target, overwhelm defenses, secure victory through superior firepower. Hana's team tried a different approach. What if we don't capture the stronghold? She suggested. What if we make the enemy abandon it? That makes no sense, protested one of their arachnoid teammates. The mission requires us to secure the facility. The mission requires us to control the facility, Hana corrected. Control doesn't always mean occupation, she outlined her plan. Instead of attacking the stronghold directly, they would cut off its supply lines, disrupt communications, and create the impression of a much larger attacking force. They would make the enemy believe that holding the position was hopeless. This is psychological manipulation, observed Zilnex. You seek to win through deception rather than combat prowess. I seek to win, Hana replied simply. The method is less important than the result. The plan worked perfectly. Enemy forces abandoned their stronghold after becoming convinced they were surrounded by overwhelming numbers. Team 7 walked into an empty facility and claimed victory without losing a single member. Other cadets began paying more attention to human strategies. During meal breaks, aliens would approach the human table to ask questions about tactical philosophy. Your methods seem indirect, said a Vexthari cadet named Thekmar. My people prefer honorable combat. Face-to-face battle where the strongest warrior wins. That works well when you're fighting other Vexthari, Dohyun replied. But what happens when you face an enemy that doesn't share your values? An enemy that considers honor a weakness to be exploited? The reptilian frowned. Such enemies are without pride. They are not worthy opponents. Maybe not, Hana said. But they might still kill you if you're not prepared for their methods. These conversations continued over the following days. Some aliens remained dismissive of human approaches, but others showed genuine curiosity. They began asking about Earth's military history, about human conflicts and how they were resolved. Hana found herself explaining concepts that were basic to human thinking, but revolutionary to alien minds. The idea of fighting multiple opponents simultaneously, the strategy of making enemies fight each other instead of you, the tactic of appearing weak when you were strong and strong when you were weak. Your species has spent remarkable energy fighting itself, observed Zilnex during one late-night conversation. He had sought out the humans after a particularly challenging simulation. Most civilizations focus their military development on external threats, predators, natural disasters, competing species. But humans seem to have evolved by competing primarily with other humans. That's probably true, Hana admitted. Our worst enemies have always been ourselves. We've had to develop strategies for fighting opponents who think like us, who know our weaknesses, who can predict our moves. And this has made you adaptable. It's made us paranoid, Doyen said with a laugh. But paranoia can be useful in the right circumstances. Zilnex was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice had lost its usual arrogance. I have been thinking about our first encounter when I grasped your wrist. You did not show fear, even though I could have injured you easily. Why? Hana considered her answer carefully. Because fear is a choice. Pain is just information, and showing weakness to a potential enemy is always a mistake. You considered me an enemy? I considered you unknown. Until I understand someone's intentions, I treat them as a potential threat, not because I want to fight, but because I want to be ready if fighting becomes necessary. The crystalline being processed this information with visible surprise. You think like a predator. No, Hana corrected. I think like prey that learned how to hunt. That night she noticed General Voxthera observing their conversation from across the room. When their eyes met, the reptilian commander gave her a small nod of acknowledgement before walking away. The next morning brought news that would change everything. Cadets, announced Instructor Krevdan, his 6 arms gesturing for attention. The Crucible trials have been accelerated. Due to emerging security concerns, final testing will begin in 3 days rather than 2 weeks. Murmurs of concern rippled through the assembled cadets. The Crucible trials were supposed to be the ultimate test, a series of challenges that would separate the elite from the merely competent. What kind of security concerns? Asked a brave Nexari cadet. Krevdan's multiple eyes focused on the questioner. That information is classified. What matters is that your training must conclude quickly. The galaxy has need of new officers, and we must determine who is worthy of command. As the assembly dispersed, Hana caught sight of General Voxthera in conversation with several other instructors. Their body language suggested urgency, even alarm. Something was happening. Something that required the academy to rush cadets through final testing ahead of schedule. Whatever it was, she had the feeling that humans were about to face their greatest challenge yet. The briefing room fell silent as General Voxthera entered, flanked by instructors whose expressions ranged from grim to terrified. Even the usually confident alien cadets seemed to sense that something had changed. The final trial has been moved to today, the general announced without preamble. You will face a live combat exercise against captured specimens that were scheduled for disposal. Due to recent intelligence, we require immediate assessment of your combat readiness. Hana felt ice form in her stomach. Live combat meant real danger, not simulation. Around her, other cadets whispered nervously. What kind of specimens? Asked Thekamar, the Vexthari who had questioned human tactics. General Voxthara's scarred face remained expressionless. Void wraiths. 3 specimens, contained but functional. You will be divided into 10 squads of 5 cadets each. Your mission is survival for 6 hours in a controlled environment. The room erupted in shocked voices. Even Hana, who didn't know what void wraiths were, could tell from the alien reactions that this was far beyond normal training. Sir, one of the arachnoid cadets said, his voice shaking. Void wraiths killed my grandfather. They nearly destroyed my homeworld. Surely this is too dangerous for a training exercise. These are juveniles, the general replied coldly, weakened by captivity and controlled by containment fields. However, I will not pretend the risk is minimal. Some of you may not survive this trial. Instructor Zethul stepped forward with a data tablet. Void wraiths are extra-dimensional parasites that feed on neural energy. They induce paralyzing terror in most sentient species, as both a hunting mechanism and a feeding process. Standard energy weapons are ineffective. Physical combat requires specialized equipment and extensive training. Equipment that you will not have, General Voxthera added. Standard academy weapons and gear only. This is a test of adaptability and courage under extreme conditions. Hana raised her hand. General, what exactly do these creatures look like? What are their capabilities? Several alien cadets turned to stare at her. Asking for tactical information about an enemy was sensible, but her calm tone seemed to surprise them. Void wraiths appear as shifting shadows with multiple appendages. They can phase through most solid matter but become corporeal when attacking. Their primary weapon is psychic assault. They project waves of terror that can incapacitate trained soldiers. They also possess physical claws capable of tearing through combat armor. He paused, studying the assembled cadets with those cold yellow eyes. Questions about tactics or equipment will not be answered. Discover what works through experience. Squads will be randomly assigned and deployed to different sectors of the facility. Communication between squads will be limited. Hana found herself assigned to Squad 7 with Dohyun, Zilnex, Thekmar, the Vexthari, and one of the Nexari named Veltar. It was actually a stronger team than she had expected. They were given standard plasma rifles, basic armor, and emergency medical supplies. The equipment felt inadequate compared to the descriptions of their enemies. "I have fought void wraiths before," Thekmar said as they prepared. His reptilian features were tight with memory. "During border conflicts when I was young. They are difficult to describe. Your mind tells you to run even when your body is frozen with fear." "Have any humans encountered these creatures?" Zilnex asked. "No," Hana replied. "Earth has never made contact with anything like this." "Then you have no idea what to expect." The crystalline being's form flickered with nervous energy. "Perhaps you should stay behind the rest of us during combat." Hana checked her weapon and said nothing. She had fought plenty of things she didn't understand. The unknown was just another tactical variable. The testing facility was a maze of corridors and chambers deep beneath the academy. Emergency lighting cast everything in red shadows. The walls were thick metal designed to contain things that normal barriers couldn't stop. Squad 7 took their assigned sector, Level 3, Sections C through F. They had barely entered the area when the lights went out completely. Emergency power kicked in seconds later, but those few moments of darkness were enough. Hana heard something that made her skin crawl. A sound like whispers in languages that had no words. Like screams from places that had no air. "Contact," Veltar reported, his gas-breathing apparatus hissing with increased oxygen flow. "Motion sensors detect 3 entities. Approximate range 50 meters. Multiple directions. Form defensive positions," Thekmar commanded. His military training was taking over. Overlapping fields of fire. Watch for flanking attempts. They set up at a corridor intersection that gave them good sight lines in 4 directions. Standard tactics for unknown enemies. Control space. Maintain visibility. Concentrate firepower. The first attack came from above. Something dropped through the ceiling like smoke given form. Hana caught a glimpse of shifting darkness with too many joints before waves of terror crashed into her mind. This was not ordinary fear. This was primal horror that bypassed conscious thought and went straight to the most basic parts of her brain. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to hide, to curl up and wait for death rather than face this thing. Around her, her squad mates were responding predictably. Thekmar fired wildly in all directions, his usual discipline shattered by psychic assault. Veltar had collapsed entirely, his logical Nexari mind unable to process the illogical fear. Even Zilnex was frozen, his crystalline form flickering erratically. Only Dohyun seemed relatively unaffected. The pilot was pale and shaking, but he kept his weapon trained on the creature and managed to speak. "Hana, ideas would be good right about now." She forced herself to think through the terror. Fear was information. Fear meant danger. But she had felt danger before, had learned to function despite it. The creature was corporeal when attacking. That meant it could be hurt. It used fear as a weapon. That meant it expected fear to work. It had physical form. That meant it followed physical rules. "Don't fight the fear," she told Dohyun, surprised at how steady her voice sounded. "Accept it and work around it." She raised her plasma rifle and fired at center mass. The bolt passed through the creature like it was made of shadow, but the void wraith recoiled as if struck. It can choose when to be solid, she realized. But the choice might not be conscious. It phases when it senses incoming attacks. "How does that help us?" Dohyun asked, firing his own shots that similarly passed through their target. Hana thought about misdirection, about making enemies react to threats that weren't real. "We make it choose wrong." She aimed her rifle to the left of the creature and fired. The void wraith remained corporeal, confident the shot would miss. At the same moment, Dohyun fired directly at it from the right. The plasma bolt struck solid flesh. The creature shrieked, not with voice but with pure mental anguish that sent fresh waves of terror through the squad. But now Hana understood the pattern. The creatures could phase through matter, but not when they were focused on attacking. They could project fear, but the projection required concentration. They could move through walls, but physical laws still applied when they chose to be solid. "Zilnex," she called. The crystalline being was beginning to recover from his paralysis. Can you generate light? Real light, not energy blasts. Yes, but why would that matter? These things are made of shadow. Maybe light disrupts them. Zilnex focused his abilities and began glowing brighter. The void wraith hissed and pulled back, its form becoming less distinct. Thekmar, stop firing randomly. Shoot where it's going to be, not where it is. Veltar, get up and watch our backs. There are supposed to be 3 of these things. Her calm command seemed to steady the squad. Thekmar's military training reasserted itself. Veltar struggled to his feet and began scanning for additional threats. Even their terror remained, but they were functioning despite it. The fight became a deadly game of prediction and misdirection. The humans would fire at empty space, forcing the creature to phase. Then the aliens would target its solid form. Zilnex's light kept it from moving freely through the shadows. They killed their first void wraith after 20 minutes of careful coordination. How? Thekmar asked, staring at the dissolving remains. My people have fought these creatures for generations. We never developed tactics this effective. Your people probably tried to overcome their fear, Hana replied. We worked with it instead. Fear makes you careful. Careful keeps you alive. The remaining 2 creatures attacked together, having learned from their packmate's death. But Squad 7 had learned too. They used coordinated fire patterns, light barriers, and psychological countermeasures that turned the creature's own abilities against them. By the end of the 6-hour trial, they had eliminated all 3 void wraiths in their sector with 0 casualties. The same could not be said for other squads. When they returned to the briefing room, only 37 cadets remained out of the original 50. 3 entire squads had been wiped out. Several others had lost multiple members. General Voxthera stood before the survivors with an expression that might have been surprise, though it was hard to tell on reptilian features. Squad 7, he said, report your casualties. None. Sir? Hana replied. Explain your success. She glanced at her squad mates, then back at the general. We adapted our tactics to the enemy, rather than trying to force the enemy to adapt to our tactics. We used their strengths as weaknesses and minimized the Academy's medical bay was filled with survivors from the Void Wraith trials. Some cadets suffered from physical injuries, claw marks that would leave permanent scars. Others had wounds that couldn't be seen, minds damaged by exposure to pure terror. Hana sat beside Do-hyun's bed while medical staff treated his minor cuts. Around them, alien cadets spoke in hushed voices about what they had witnessed in the depths of the facility. Squad 4 never even saw their attackers, whispered a Nexari survivor. We found them huddled in a corner, died of fear without firing a shot. Squad 2 fought bravely, added an arachnoid with bandaged arms. But their tactics were useless. Standard military formations mean nothing against enemies that can move through walls. Hana listened to their reports with growing understanding. Every failed squad had tried to fight the Void Wraiths using conventional methods. They had relied on training designed for battles between physical opponents who followed predictable rules. The humans were different, said Thekmar, approaching their group. The Vextari's scales were pale from stress, but his eyes held new respect. They treated the impossible as merely improbable. They adapted faster than I thought possible. We had good teammates, Hana replied diplomatically. Everyone contributed to our success. No, Thekmar shook his head firmly. Zilnex and I were paralyzed with fear for the first 10 minutes. Veltar couldn't even stand. You and Do-hyun were the only ones thinking clearly. Zilnex materialized beside them, his crystalline form still flickering with residual energy. I have been analyzing our encounter, he said without preamble. Human fear responses are fundamentally different from ours. When my people encounter terror, we freeze or flee. When humans encounter terror, He paused, searching for words. You become more focused. Fear sharpens attention, Do-hyun explained from his medical bed. It makes you notice details you might miss otherwise. The trick is not letting it control your decisions, but how do you learn such control? This cannot be natural behavior. Hana considered her answer carefully. Humans have been afraid for our entire evolutionary history. Afraid of predators, afraid of the dark, afraid of each other. We've learned to function despite fear because the alternative is extinction. A new voice interrupted their conversation. An interesting analysis. General Voxthera stood in the medical bay entrance, his scarred form imposing even in the healing light. Every conversation stopped as cadets noticed his presence. Squad 7, report to my office immediately, he commanded. The rest of you focus on recovery. Training resumes tomorrow for those medically cleared. The general's office was smaller than Hana expected, filled with tactical displays and military commendations from wars she had never heard of. Foxthera gestured for them to sit, then activated privacy screens that hummed with electronic interference. "What I am about to tell you is classified at the highest levels," he began. "The Void Wraiths were not scheduled for disposal. They escaped their containment 2 days ago and killed 17 staff members before we could recapture them." Hana felt cold dread settle in her stomach. "You sent cadets against escaped prisoners? I sent you against an active threat that required immediate neutralization. Standard military forces had failed twice. Specialized xenobiological teams had been decimated. We needed soldiers capable of unconventional thinking." Silnex's form flickered with agitation. "You used us as expendable test subjects. I used you as what you are training to become, military officers capable of handling impossible situations." Foxthera's yellow eyes fixed on each of them in turn. "The galaxy is not a safe place. There are threats that conventional warfare cannot address. Today proved that humans possess capabilities that other species lack." He activated a holographic display showing tactical analyses of the day's events. Every squad that failed used standard military doctrine: form defensive positions, concentrate firepower, maintain unit cohesion. These approaches have served the galaxy well for centuries. The display shifted to show Squad 7's movements. "You ignored conventional wisdom entirely. You treated fear as information rather than paralysis. You used enemy abilities against them. You adapted your tactics in real time based on observed results rather than predetermined doctrine." Tekmar leaned forward. "Are you saying that human military thinking is superior to our own?" "I am saying that human military thinking is different from yours, and that difference may be exactly what the galaxy needs." Voxathera stood and walked to a wall display showing star charts. "There are threats emerging beyond our borders that do not fight as we expect. Enemies that do not respond to traditional deterrence or conventional force. The Federation needs officers who can think like these new enemies while remaining loyal to our values." He turned back to face them. "I fought humans once 20 years ago during first contact incidents. My forces were superior in every measurable way. Better weapons, stronger soldiers, more advanced technology. We should have won easily." His scarred face showed what might have been remembered pain. "Instead, we were systematically outmaneuvered and defeated by creatures we considered primitives. Humans fought wars we didn't understand, using tactics we couldn't predict, accepting casualties we couldn't comprehend." "What kind of casualties?" Veltar asked quietly. "The kind that civilized species avoid. Humans were willing to sacrifice themselves to achieve objectives that other species would abandon. They fought not just to win battles, but to send messages, to establish psychological dominance, to create fear in their enemies." Hana felt uncomfortable hearing her species described this way, but she couldn't deny the accuracy. Human history was filled with conflicts where victory came through brutality that other species might find incomprehensible. "After the war ended," Voxthera continued, "I spent years studying human military history. I learned about concepts that do not exist in other cultures. Totalvar, scorched earth, mutually assured destruction. Humans have developed ways of fighting that other species literally cannot imagine." "And you think this makes us valuable allies?" Tohyun asked. "I think it makes you necessary allies. The galaxy has enjoyed relative peace for generations because our enemies were predictable. They followed rules we understood. They had limits we could calculate." He gestured to the star charts showing unexplored regions beyond Federation space. "The new threats follow no rules we recognize. They have no limits we can understand. To fight them, we need soldiers who can think as they do." Zilnex pulsed with nervous energy. "You want humans to teach us how to be monsters?" "No," Voxthera replied firmly. "I want humans to teach us how to fight monsters without becoming monsters ourselves. There is a difference." He returned to his desk and activated another display. "The Academy Board has reviewed today's results. Based on your performance against the Void Wraiths, Squad 7 is being fast-tracked for advanced officer training. You will graduate with full honors and receive immediate commissions in the Federation Defense Force." "All of us?" Thekmar asked with surprise. "All of you. The humans proved that mixed species units can achieve results that homogeneous squads cannot. Your success was based on combining human adaptability with alien specialized abilities." He handed them data tablets containing their new assignments. You will be assigned to the Federation's new Rapid Response Division. This unit handles threats that standard forces cannot address using standard methods. Hana studied her orders with mixed feelings. They were offering her everything she had hoped for: respect, responsibility, and the chance to prove human worth. But the cost was becoming something she wasn't sure she wanted to be. "General," she said carefully, "what happens if these new tactics work too well? What happens if humans become too good at fighting impossible enemies?" Voxthara's expression was unreadable. "Then the galaxy will have to decide whether the cure is worse than the disease. But that is a problem for politicians and philosophers. Our job is to ensure there is still a galaxy for them to debate about." As they prepared to leave, the general spoke once more. "You asked earlier about human fear responses. I will tell you what I observed during our first contact war. Humans are not braver than other species. They are simply more familiar with being afraid. You have lived with terror so long that you have learned to make it serve you rather than control you." He paused at the door. "When other species encounter true darkness, they pray for light. When humans encounter true darkness, they learn to see in the dark. The galaxy will need that skill in the days to come." That evening, the 5 members of Squad 7 gathered in the human quarters to discuss their future. The other human cadets had also received graduation orders, though their assignments were to different divisions. "So what now?" Do-hyun asked. "We proved humans can fight aliens. We proved we can work with aliens. Where does that leave us?" "It leaves us with a responsibility," Hana replied. "We've shown that human thinking can solve problems that stumped everyone else. That means when the next impossible problem appears, they're going to expect us to have answers." Zilnex flickered thoughtfully. The general spoke of threats beyond Federation space. "Do you think he was referring to something specific?" "Probably. Military leaders don't prepare for imaginary enemies. Our disadvan.